The smell of hickory smoke and sizzling ribs floated through the warm Arizona air as the Harper family's annual summer barbecue hit full swing. Laughter rolled across the backyard like thunder uncles arguing over fantasy football kids, darting between folding chairs, and my mother shouting instructions from the grill with her trademark wine spritzer in hand. I stood off to the side, leaning against the weather-worn fence, clutching a lemonade I didn't really want. I was 32, but to them I was still Ellie the dreamer, the artsy one who never quite figured it out. My little sister Lauren, as always, stood at the center of attention, in a pale blue jumpsuit, her voice animated as she bragged about her recent double master's degrees from Wharton and MIT. She's got Fortune 500 interviews lined up back to back. Mom beamed loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. The crowd applauded like they were at a graduation, and then like clockwork, her eyes shifted to me. Meanwhile, she added, some of us are still deciding what they want to do with their lives. Isn't that right, Ellie? I smiled thinly, saying nothing, but inside something stirred. Tomorrow they'd all see just how wrong they were. I didn't bother to respond to my mom's jab. After all these years, I'd mastered the art of silence. Let them talk, let them laugh. I sipped my lemonade and watched as Lauren soaked in the admiration like a sponge. Every nod, every wow fed her. She thrived in the spotlight, and I didn't blame her. She had learned early that praise was currency in our family. The more polished, the more predictable your path, the more love you got. Me, I colored outside the lines. That had always made them uncomfortable. I remembered the day I moved out to Tempe after college with nothing but a secondhand laptop and a stack of unpaid student loans. I was the punchline back then. Now, a decade later, I owned a tech firm headquartered downtown, grossing tens of millions a year. But to them, I was still just drifting. You still tinkering with that online thing of yours? Dad called from the grill, flipping a steak, not even looking my way. I smiled slow and deliberate. Something like that. He chuckled. Well, I hope it's paying better than it sounds. I almost laughed. Just yesterday, I had signed off on a company-wide equity package worth more than Dad's entire retirement plan, but I didn't say that. I never did. Part of me wondered if I kept quiet out of some twisted sense of loyalty. Or maybe I just liked the privacy. Cascade Logic had grown under the radar, and I had stayed invisible by design. Even in the Forbes article last month, my name wasn't mentioned. They used my alias, Erin Lynn, and an obscured photo to protect my identity. It wasn't just strategy, it was armor. No one could hurt what they couldn't see. I looked across the yard at Lauren, now animatedly describing her upcoming interview with Cascade Logic. It's one of the top firms in the country, she said, practically glowing. They reached out to me directly. The irony almost made me choke on my drink. I had reviewed her resume just days ago. HR had flagged her as a maybe, a stretch, a polished, impressive stretch, but still not a sure thing. And now, here she was, gushing about my company, unaware that I was the one who would decide her fate. Aunt Brenda leaned in, whispering to Mom, "Isn't that the firm started by some self-made genius? What's her name? Erin something." My mom nodded, lips pursed. Who knows if that's even real? These companies love their myths. I said nothing. Just watched the sun dip lower behind the fence, painting long golden streaks across the patio. Then Lauren turned to me, all saccharine and smug. "Maybe if I get hired, I can help you find something there too. I mean, entry-level admin roles aren't bad. Good benefits." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "That's so sweet of you, Lauren. Your sister could really use the help." My chest tightened, but I forced a smile. Let them have their moment. Just this one last time. Tomorrow would rewrite everything. As the barbecue carried on into the night, I found myself drifting in and out of conversations, nodding politely, laughing when expected, but mostly counting the hours. The comments from earlier still clung to me like smoke-sweet Lauren, going places, helping poor Ellie maybe land a starter job. My hands itched with the urge to reach for my phone, to pull up the company's latest quarterly report, to show them the 8-figure revenue we had just posted. But I didn't. I never had. My success had never been about rubbing it in their faces, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't want them to know. I just wanted them to see me, really see me. Not as the creative one or the quiet one, but as the woman who had built something real, something powerful. But they never asked. They never wondered. They just assumed. Somewhere between the potato salad and my cousin Jake's announcement about his new boat, Lauren stood and tapped her wine glass with a polished fingernail. Before I head out, she said, smiling like she was giving a TED Talk, wish me luck. I've got a final round interview tomorrow with Cascade Logic. That's right, the tech giant. CEO will be sitting in on interviews personally. There were gasps, cheers, applause. That's amazing, someone said. They only hire the best of the best. Dad raised his beer. Now that's my girl. I couldn't stop the quiet laugh that slipped from my throat. It was brief, sharp, almost bitter. No one noticed. Lauren turned to me and grinned. Fingers crossed, huh? Maybe by this time tomorrow I'll be your boss. She giggled, tossing her hair over one shoulder. Don't worry, sis. I'll be gentle. That one stung. But not for the reason she thought. It stung because she was so certain, so sure of the world she thought she belonged to, so oblivious to what she was walking into. And even now, after all her arrogance, after years of backhanded comments and being the family's golden child, I didn't feel anger. I felt something closer to sadness. She had spent so much time trying to look like success that she'd never actually done the work, and tomorrow she would find out the difference. I left the barbecue quietly tossing a vague excuse about an early client call. Mom waved me off with a distracted nod, reminding me to Venmo my share of Dad's birthday gift. Lauren already covered most of it, she said without looking up. I nodded, walked to the plain gray SUV I used for family events, and slipped behind the wheel. My white Mercedes, the one with the custom interior and the Cascade Logic parking tag, sat untouched in my reserved garage spot downtown. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced back once. Lauren stood at the edge of the patio, laughing confident, utterly unaware. She was right about one thing. Tomorrow was going to change everything, just not the way she thought. The next morning, I was already in my office before sunrise. The city still slept as golden streaks of light spilled across the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 27th floor. Camelback Mountain stood stoic in the distance, watching silently as if it too knew what this day would bring. I poured a coffee straight black and took a moment to just breathe. The quiet hum of early systems coming online was oddly comforting. This space, my space, was a reflection of everything I had built, sleek, strong, and entirely mine. No family name got me here, no connections. Just 10 years of grit, late nights, failed prototypes, and the kind of sacrifice no one ever asked me about. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. The tailored slate gray suit I wore felt less like fashion and more like armor. I wasn't nervous. If anything, I was finally ready. My assistant Nia knocked gently and stepped inside, holding a slim folder. Your sister's interview is at 9 a.m. sharp. She's already in the lobby. Got here 25 minutes early. She's enthusiastic. I raised an eyebrow. That's new. Nia smiled. She's also posted about it. Future executive at Cascade Logic. Marketing flagged it. I stifled a laugh. Of course she had. Anything else? Nia hesitated. She told the front desk she's excited to modernize the company once she's hired. I let out a breath and took the folder from her hand. Has she now? I flipped it open. Lauren's resume was perfect on paper, dual degrees, impeccable formatting, glowing recommendations, but I'd read between those lines before. The internships handed to her, the praise paid for in family favors and second-hand privilege. The difference between her and me was simple. She climbed a ladder others built. I built the damn building. The board's curious why you're sitting in on this one personally. Nia added a hint of amusement in her voice. I didn't look up. Quality control. She smirked. Understood. I watched the clock tick down. At 9 o'clock sharp, I stood behind the one-way glass above the executive conference suite and watched as Lauren strutted in. Chanel suit, Prada heels, flawless posture. She shook hands with the first interviewer like she owned the room. But I could already see it beneath the polish, the cracks. Her answers were rehearsed, her tone overly confident. The questions she didn't expect started to trip her up. She smiled too much, blinked too fast. By the second round, the charm was wearing thin. By the third, her voice had lost its edge. Her confidence had begun to falter, and soon she'd walk into the final round. With me. I stepped back from the glass and straightened my jacket. She had no idea who was sitting at the other side of that table. Not yet, but she would, and the moment she did it would be the moment everything unraveled. Send her in, I said quietly. My voice was calm, steady, the way it always was when things mattered. I walked back to my desk, turned my chair toward the windows, and waited. The light had shifted now, brighter, sharper, fitting. A few moments later, I heard the door open. Her footsteps were confident, measured, like someone walking into a room where they believed the job was already theirs. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me, she said, her tone polite but crisp. Mr. Lin, I understand your schedule must be packed. I turned slowly in my chair. It wasn't dramatic, just intentional. I let the silence hang for a moment longer than necessary before I finally looked her in the eyes. Actually, I said, my voice even. It's Miss Lin, Emily Renee Lin. The name hit her like a slap. Her smile froze mid-expression. Her posture stiffened. And for the first time in years, Lauren didn't have something clever to say. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Nothing came out. I let her sit with it. Let her look around my office, the plaques, the awards, the framed cover of Forbes with the company logo behind my silhouette. Her eyes darted across the space like she was trying to make sense of a dream unraveling in real time. Emily, she finally managed, her voice a whisper. You're the CEO. Yes, I replied softly. Of the company you've been bragging about for weeks. The one you said might finally give me a real job. Her face flushed deep red, her lips parted in disbelief. But that doesn't make sense. You're just a freelancer. Mom said, Am I? I asked, standing slowly and walking toward the shelf behind my desk. I gestured toward a row of awards, Tech Innovator of the Year Women, in Business Leadership, fastest growing firm in the Southwest. You never asked. You just assumed. All of you did. She looked like she'd been dropped into a world she didn't understand. All that certainty, all that pride was melting. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. I wasn't here to humiliate her. I was here to be honest. For once, I reviewed your resume personally, I continued. On paper, you're impressive. But the panel 3 independent partners recommended against moving forward. They cited lack of depth, surface-level answers, and an entitled attitude. Her voice cracked. You set me up. No, I said. I gave you exactly what you asked for, a fair interview, and you didn't show up prepared for the truth. She blinked back tears, but not the sorrowful kind. These were hot, humiliated tears, and she had nowhere to place the blame. For the first time, maybe in her life, she was facing herself. I returned to my desk and sat down slowly. We're done here, I said. You should go. Her heels clicked unevenly as she stood as if suddenly unsure how to walk in them. I pressed the intercom. "Nia, please escort Miss Harper out." "Yes, ma'am," came the reply. As the door closed behind her, I finally exhaled. But I knew this wasn't over, not even close. It didn't take long. Less than an hour after Lauren had been escorted out, my phone began to light up with notifications, texts from my parents, missed calls from my aunt, a string of messages in the family group chat. The first one came from Mom. "What kind of cruel joke is this? Emily Lauren is devastated." Then Dad chimed in. "You humiliated your sister. We raised you better than that." I stared at the screen, the words blurring together as the emotion I had pushed down for years began to stir. They didn't ask how I was. They didn't ask why I had done what I did. They didn't ask anything at all. Just blame. Just shock that their golden child wasn't chosen. I set the phone face down on my desk and stared out the window. The skyline of Phoenix was sharp against the morning light, crisp and unforgiving, much like the truth. I had waited a long time for this moment, when the mask would come off, when my family would finally see me for who I really was. And now that it had arrived, it didn't feel like triumph. It felt like grief. Grief for the years I spent trying to earn their respect, for the version of me they never cared to know, for the love they only gave to the image they preferred. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Then, after a deep breath, I picked up the phone and typed a single message into the group chat. "You raised me to be successful. Congratulations. You did." I hit send. That was it. That was all they were getting. I powered down the phone and turned my full attention back to the work in front of me. There were calls to prepare for partnership meetings, to finalize, and a press event coming up for our European expansion. This world, the one I built with my own hands, needed me more than their disappointment ever would. Still, part of me ached, not from guilt, but from the finality of it. You hope deep down that one day they'll wake up and see you, not the caricature, not the black sheep, not the fallback daughter, but you. And when they don't, you have to keep building anyway. That afternoon, Nia stepped into my office with a quiet knock. "You have a delivery," she said, holding out a small padded envelope. I opened it and found a crumpled note scribbled in my mother's handwriting, folded around an old family photo from when Lauren and I were kids. The note was short. "I don't know what to say to you right now. I just hope we haven't lost you." I stared at the picture. Two girls barefoot in the backyard, arms slung around each other, faces sunlit and careless. I felt something shift just slightly. Maybe this wasn't the end of the story. Maybe it was just the break. But I couldn't be the one to fix it. Not this time. Tomorrow the Forbes cover with my full name and face would hit stands. No more shadows. No more hiding. Let them see it. Let them all see. The magazine arrived at my office before noon. I hadn't expected to feel anything when I saw it. After all, I'd approved every photo, every quote, every line of the article. But as I peeled back the brown shipping sleeve and stared at the glossy cover, something in me caught. There I was. Full face, clear name, Emily Renee Harper, founder and CEO of Cascade Logic. Behind me, the city skyline shimmered like a crown. The headline read, "The Silent Success, How One Woman Built a Billion-Dollar Company While Everyone Was Looking the Other Way." I traced my name with my fingertip almost in disbelief, not because I wasn't ready, but because for the first time in a decade, I was allowing myself to be seen. No pseudonym, no silhouette, no layers of protection, just me. And I knew what this would mean. For the industry, it would be a statement. For women in tech, a rallying cry. For my family, I wasn't sure. I had 10 copies shipped express to each of their homes. No note, no message, just the truth in print delivered right to their doorsteps. I didn't send them out of spite. I sent them because I was done pretending. I had spent so long keeping the peace, dimming my light, swallowing my pride, just to avoid the discomfort of being misunderstood. But I'd grown tired of shrinking for their comfort. I didn't need them to celebrate me. I just needed them to stop dismissing me. The afternoon passed in a quiet rhythm. I reviewed expansion plans, greenlit a new marketing proposal, and took a call with a potential European partner. Everything was moving forward exactly as it should be, and yet a dull weight settled in my chest. Not regret, not doubt, something quieter, something more like mourning. I wasn't just saying goodbye to who they thought I was saying goodbye to the hope that they'd ever see me without conditions. Around 4:30, my phone buzzed. A message from Lauren. I hadn't heard from her since the interview. I stared at the preview on the screen, not yet opening it. I saw the article. Guess I never really knew you at all. That was it. No apology, no rage, just a flat, quiet line that felt more like a crack forming than a door opening. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I looked up at the framed magazine cover, now sitting on my shelf. It was more than a milestone. It was a marker, a line in the sand. The version of me they'd constructed was gone. And what came next, well, that would be up to them, whether they wanted to reach across the divide or stay safely on the other side. The choice wasn't mine anymore. I had built my world. They had to decide if they wanted to step into it. Weeks passed. The silence from my family grew thicker, heavier, not angry, just awkward. It lingered in the background, like a paused conversation that no one knew how to finish. The regular Sunday barbecues stopped. The family group chat went quiet. Even the casual birthday reminders and chain messages dried up. It was as if my truth had short-circuited the rhythm of our family. And maybe it had. I didn't blame them. For years I played along. I let them believe I was drifting unsure, just trying to find my place. It was easier that way. They had their roles scripted, and I was always cast as the one who hadn't quite made it. But the article shattered that narrative. It forced them to reckon with a version of me they'd never cared to imagine. One that didn't need their validation. One that had succeeded on her own terms. Lauren eventually took a job at a boutique agency across town. Nothing glamorous, nothing corporate or shiny, just a mid-level project coordinator role. I heard about it through a mutual connection. She hadn't reached out again, and I hadn't reached back. Part of me wanted to. Part of me kept drafting responses to that single unfinished message she'd sent, but nothing felt right. Because the truth was, I didn't know how to be her sister anymore. Not after everything. One afternoon, I got a call from my Aunt June, one of the few relatives who never treated me like I was invisible. They're trying, you know, she said gently. Your mom's embarrassed. Your dad's quiet. They don't know how to make it right. I didn't answer right away. There was no easy fix. Not for the years of being doubted. Dismissed. Treated like a child while I was signing multi-million-dollar deals behind closed doors. You don't owe anyone an apology, she added. But maybe, just don't close the door all the way. I hung up and sat in the stillness of my office. Outside, the desert sun cast long shadows across the mountains. It was a beautiful view, expansive and untouchable, and yet I felt a pang of something I hadn't felt in a while. Loneliness, not the kind that comes from being alone, the kind that comes from being unseen, misunderstood. There's a difference between being powerful and being known. I had earned the first, but I wasn't sure I'd ever really had the second. I thought back to the old photo my mom had sent. 2 little girls in the backyard arms, tangled around each other, laughing at something forgotten. That version of us didn't know how things would turn out, didn't know what roles we'd be forced into or what walls would be built between us. That version still believed in each other, and for a brief moment, I wished I could go back, just for a second, to remember what it felt like to belong before the world, and success and pride made it all so complicated. One morning, I stood by the window of my office, watching the sun rise over Camelback Mountain, its light bleeding gold across the glass like forgiveness. I felt different now, older not in years, but in understanding. I no longer needed them to clap for me. I no longer feared their silence. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped chasing their approval and started honoring my own truth. I had been betrayed by their doubt, but I had stayed loyal to my dream. That was enough. The road to becoming myself hadn't been loud. It had been lonely, quiet, paved with sacrifices no one clapped for. But it was mine, and as I looked out over a city I helped shape, I felt not anger, not regret, just peace. Real peace. Because sometimes the people who doubt you the loudest are the ones who once feared your power the most. And sometimes rising means letting go of needing them to rise with you. Betrayal breaks illusions. Loyalty rebuilds identity and rebirth. That begins the moment you stop apologizing for who you've become. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or quietly building something no one believed in, know this: you're not alone. Your journey matters. Share your story in the comments. And if you believe in quiet strength and second chances, subscribe. This space is for us.